Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the musicians and artists that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Richard Barone is an American singer, guitarist, songwriter, arranger, producer, author, and teacher who is most known as the frontman for new wave power pop band The Bongos. The band formed in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1980. By the time of disbanding in 1987, there had been 3 albums, a slew of singles, and a couple of compilations. Phantom Train, a lost album recorded prior to breaking up, would finally see the light of day with the release in 2013. Richard has also released several solo albums and published a couple of books as well, one being his memoir. Recent years have seen Mr. Barone creating concert events, including many tribute shows and recordings. My guest resides in Greenwich Village, where he is continuing his professorship at the New York School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, as well as hosting the folk radio show on WBAI Radio in New York. Well, welcome, Richard.
Great, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's nice to be had, right?
Of course,
Yes.
always, always. I do want to say one thing about the Bongos.
Okay.
So the Bongos never actually broke up.
Okay.
We just after touring for several years, doing an average of 300 shows a year, I think we just needed a break, and we started doing other things. Started making solo recordings, and other members also did different recordings and things. And we've always gotten back together when the time was right.
Okay.
If it was a charity event or something that where we could contribute something important, or if we had, the various options that come your way when you're a musician, like to perform with bands that you like or love.
Right.
So those opportunities were things that we took advantage of, and we still do. We did some dates this year here in New York City with the release of our newest album, The Shroud of Turin,
Okay.
which
You
was
did leave,
recorded.
you left the door open, so yeah,
Yes, the
yeah,
door
so
was
it
always
wasn't
left
completely
open.
closed, right?
Yeah. And we're friends, so it's just
Yeah,
if it works out, then it's always great. But I never said we broke up. And I made a solo album in '87.
right.
I had been living in Greenwich Village and wanted to experience the Greenwich Village music scene more, and started doing dates locally. When I did that, a band came, a really cool ensemble came together. We made an album live here in New York at the Bottom Line nightclub at the time, called Cool Blue Halo, and that album sparked a tour, which I toured with Suzanne Vega
Uh-huh.
all over the country, and that was just went on for 2 years so far. It still actually went on longer, but we did a tour of 2 years around the world, really, with that album. That led to me being signed to MCA Records, Universal, and I did an album for them. So it was like one thing led to another, which has been the story of my life, actually.
Yes, your mantra. Yes, right. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Tampa, Florida.
Okay, I saw some references there, so I figured
Mhm.
you originated down there. Oh,
Yeah, I was born in Tampa, Florida, and was very interested in music at a young age, because of the Beatles, I think, and because of Donovan, an artist who I really loved as a child. My
yeah.
first concert was seeing Donovan in concert when I was 11.
Oh,
But
yes.
but when I was 7 years old, I was already on the radio locally on
Right, right.
WWALT AM
You,
radio, as the little DJ.
as a
Uh,
little DJ, I was going to ask you about that.
so
Okay.
that led to me learning a lot about different bands, and I was a fan, but I was also engaged in the music industry at a young age, and was able to produce artists, and it's been a lifelong adventure.
Right, right, right. Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Well, yes, my father was a percussionist when he was a younger man. He had been in like an Afro-Cuban Latin band that, of course, in Florida, there's a lot of Cuban community. And he was in a band that was doing Cuban big band arrangements, and he was the percussionist. So when we formed the Bongos, the name was very appropriate for me because my father was a bongo player,
There
you
you
know?
go. There you
Yeah.
go. All right. Well, how about some music in the household early on? What were you hearing?
Yeah. My mother was always listening to the pop radio stations. So I was always hearing the top 40 of whatever time, whatever decade, whatever years those encompassed. I was hearing the top 40 a lot. And then also, my father liked the traditional singers like Dean Martin and Sinatra. I mean, they were really, especially Italian tenors, you
Right.
know. So I heard a lot of music. There
Yeah.
was a lot of
I,
music in my house, and I was encouraged not only to play music and given guitar lessons starting at 7 years old, but I was encouraged to listen to music, because that's a big part of enjoying music is not just playing it, but listening. So
right.
yeah, I grew up in a musical household, even though I was the only one who actually became a professional musician. The family was music oriented. My sister really loved prog rock at a young age. She's younger than I am, was very into Pink Floyd and Zeppelin. So I was more, sometimes more pop. She was playing like hard rock. It all came together in my world.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my dad on his hi-fi playing Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass. I grew up with that.
Yeah, yeah. My mother loved Herb Alpert. Yeah,
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 so I have a fond memories of that. So I've always liked
yeah.
that south of the border sound. I've
It's
always
a great sound. Yeah, I remember purchasing for my mother's birthday one year a copy of "Going Places" by
right,
the Tijuana Brass. So
right.
yeah, yeah, that was in our house too. But there was a lot of music. We had a lot of, I had in my room I had a stereo, but there was a household stereo also, and there was a lot of music in all the rooms.
Right, right.
Everybody
Do
had
you?
everybody had turntables in their rooms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So lots of variety going on. Well, how
yeah.
about can you recall the first 45 or album that you got yourself that you purchased?
For me, I think my first record would have been the Beatles' "Ticket to Ride," something like that.
Okay, okay.
I think it was "Ticket to Ride" and "Yes It Is." I think was my first actual in my hand single that was mine. I think.
We talk
That
about it.
makes sense. It makes
Yeah,
sense because that's the sound that
yeah.
I still love as a core. It's
Right.
in my DNA.
I talked to a lot of musicians that are a few years older than yourself and me, and
Hmm.
just the whole experience that we miss these days of going down to the record store.
Yeah,
The anticipation. Looking through the albums. They're bringing it back
yeah,
a little bit with the vinyl.
yeah. I know.
But
I know.
just buying it or playing it, listening stations, and then going home and then taking off the wrapping and just the whole anticipation about that. And then playing it, the liner notes and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a big experience. It's a
Yeah,
big
it
part
is.
of, for me, it was a big part of my life. But also, in
Yep.
fact, my first actual job in high school was working in a record store. So I
Ah,
was able to really get, I mean, the radio station would send me singles, but then I was able to get into album culture when I worked in a record store in high school. And I
right, right.
learned a lot about all the bands,
Yeah,
and I was really reading the liner notes. And what's a thrill to me is that I was able, then later, coming to New York, I was able to work with so many of the people I had read about on record liner notes,
right, right.
including the album designers. I mean, John Kosh, who did so many great album covers, including the Beatles' Abbey Road and he was the chief designer for Apple Records, but also did the Who's Next cover
Oh,
and
that's right.
then he did my recent single with Daryl McDaniels, All Fall Down. I mean, he did that cover, so that was such a thrill to
Right.
finally get to work with him. But again, with Donovan, he became a
Yeah,
mentor and friend to me for many, many years, still is. And we've made several albums together in different ways. I've toured with him on guitar, playing guitar and singing with him. Those
yeah.
are thrills for me because it's like a full circle. Like it's
Right,
the
right.
admiration for an artist and then
Yeah,
the fulfillment of working with
yeah.
them.
And
Pete Seeger, another example. Yeah.
and how surreal that must be too, to have admiration, almost like an idol, and then one day to be working with them, or recording with them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not surreal. It's real. I mean,
It's real. It's
it's
real.
a manifestation of the
Right,
passion.
right,
It's
right,
the manifestation of my passion for music
right.
has brought me together with artists that I love. I
It's
think,
it's it's come to fruition that way.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, was the guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
Yes, I was at first curious about a clarinet. Because my mother was a big band fan and showed me the Benny Goodman story film, whatever biopic that was at that time.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, wow, the clarinet, it's so cool. And I liked the way it looked.
right.
But really, for me, it's always been guitar.
Yeah,
I play a bit of keyboards. I really love the Mellotron. I love electronic keyboards, but my instrument is guitar.
yeah, yeah. Did you take lessons or just
Yeah,
self-taught?
no, I took lessons.
Okay,
As I was saying, I had lessons starting at age 7.
okay,
But I would get anxious at lessons because I wanted to know more than they were teaching me. So
right.
I would learn from playing along with records.
Right, right, right. I hear that doing these interviews that a lot of times it's a little too restrictive.
I felt restricted, yeah, but
Yeah,
I did take them because I wanted to learn rudiments.
yeah, you have to
So
learn the basics,
yeah,
for right, like
yeah.
move on. Well, what were some other early musical influences, bands for you?
Well, I love acoustic music. I like a lot of different types of music. I love the Beatles as an early influence, and as I said, Donovan and that kind of songwriting as well, where it's a pop format. But I do, I've always loved experimentation. So by the time the progressive rock movement came along, especially the groups from England, like Roxy Music, Brian Eno was a big influence as I was a teenager.
Yes,
David Bowie was a big influence. I think the biggest turning point was when I saw T-Rex in concert in high school and
gotcha.
uh, or junior high, and I saw the T-Rex opening for Three Dog Night. I did not stay to see, even though they're fine. I didn't even stay to see Three Dog Night because I wanted to meet Mark Bolan.
Yeah,
So I left after T-Rex performed.
yeah,
Um, but that was a turning point because I really liked the way things were evolving at
yeah,
that time in the 70s with music, and I liked the hard sounds with the guitars. So T-Rex, seeing T-Rex was a turning point for me.
yeah, yeah. I like that whole glam rock scene and that.
I did, I loved it, and you know, it merges with progressive rock in special ways in the 70s. And I do a show with Glenn Mercer of the Feelies. We have a
Oh,
show called Hazy Cosmic Jive. In fact, we have a vinyl record coming out, I believe, early next year or late this year. We've been doing shows of that era, songs from the time that inspired us to be musicians.
is that right? Is that right? Yeah,
And
I have.
there's quite a lot of Roxy
Yeah,
music in that, as well as the Velvet Underground, who inspired a lot of the 70s progressive
that's
movement.
very, very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I have an upcoming chat with Don Powell, who was the drummer in Slade.
Oh, and we love Slade. The Bongos often play "Goodbye to Jane" by Slade.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I was really surprised on that one. He's in Denmark,
Oh,
but yes, that he was up for the chat, the interview. Well,
yeah, that's good. That's good.
yeah,
Slade were an important part of what I'm talking
right,
about
right.
the evolution of music. How, you know, we had the
Yeah,
Beatles, and then we had the next really big. Well, there's been a lot of movements
yeah, there
with
has. Yeah,
music,
yeah.
but the T-Rex, Slade, Bowie, that was another huge movement, I believe.
Sweet. Yeah, another one as well.
Sweet, yeah, I love Sweet,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, talk about how you met Tiny Tim.
Well, I met Tiny Tim when I was in high school. He was not a big star at that point. He was had already had his moments of fame that were at the time huge. But I met him after that, and I learned a lot about show business from him. He became a friend and mentor. We spent the summer, my friends and I spent the summer with him, really recording, talking, hearing stories about Greenwich Village, New York City, and learning about how fame is a fleeting thing sometimes, and how the important thing is the understanding and love of music. And he taught me a lot about the large, huge range of popular music that was way beyond the scope that I was familiar with. I mean,
Right,
we're talking the early analog era where
right.
the cylinders and wax recordings,
Right.
and it was just it was a different time, and it was
Yeah.
something I wasn't aware of, and Tiny Tim taught me a lot about that.
Okay. Well, how about the monkeys?
Oh, and I met him actually, if you want to know how I met him, he was performing at a hotel.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted for a moment. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay. We'll go back
Okay.
to Tiny Tim
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
How
I
you
will.
met him?
I
Yeah.
will. Yeah. Yeah. So he was performing at a small hotel bar at that point, and my friends and I could not get in because we were underage.
Okay.
And he offered to perform the entire show in his hotel room, which he did.
Yeah.
And the next night, the next night, he invited us back the next night, and we came back. This time, I asked him if I could bring a tape recorder. So I started recording the conversations and music, and eventually invited him to go to the recording studio to record properly. And we made an album called "I've Never Seen a Straight Banana" that came out in 2012.
Right. Right. You were
On
able to finish the production on that. Yeah.
Yes, because at the time that we recorded it, I really had no idea how to finish it or to get a record label to put it out.
Yeah.
But later I could, so I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. He wanted me to, and I would bump into him in New York once I moved here, and he was surprised and happy to see me living in New York. And he always said, "What about our recordings? When are you going to put them out?" And I was like, "Soon." I wasn't able to while he was alive, but I was able to when he passed. Yeah,
Right, right. When was it he passed?
in
When,
the 90s. In the
in,
90s.
yeah, it has been a while. It has been a while.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. He
Or
died
what?
fairly young, considering, but he worked himself hard and was performing on stage when he passed. Yeah.
That's right. That is
Mhm.
right. That is right. Well, how about the monkeys?
The Monkees, that's how I got to New York. The Monkees were also performing in Tampa. A lot of people performed in Tampa, sort of because Florida was a great sort of maybe place for not a nostalgia circuit.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. But I did meet the Monkees. They were on tour. Just two of them, Davey and Mickey, were on tour. But the intriguing thing was that they had a backing band called the Laughing Dogs. Now, I knew them. I knew them because they were on an album live at CBGB that Atlantic Records had put out. I was very interested in the punk scene. Uh, and they didn't really announce themselves as the Laughing Dogs, but I remembered I knew them from the photo inside that album. So after the show, I went over to say hi and meet them and say I like their track on the Live at CBGB album, etc. And
Yeah.
we struck up a friendship, and my friend Gene and I ended up going on tour with them for the next few dates through Florida to Miami.
Is that right?
And somewhere along the way, we blurted out that we wanted to go to New York. And so the Laughing Dog said, "Well, why don't you stay in our loft because we're on tour with the Monkees all year, and you can stay in Brooklyn," which
Okay.
sounded like an alien planet to me. But I said, "Sure, Brooklyn." So
Right.
we pretty much packed the next day and moved to.
Wow, that fast, huh?
That's how I
Yeah.
got very soon after. Within a week, we were on a train to New York,
Yeah.
and and then that's
Then the
and
bongos,
I
right?
did not look back. I met the Bongos very soon after that,
Okay.
within months, within a
Well,
few months.
talk about the formation of the band,
Okay,
how that came together.
okay. So what was happening was that some of the Bongos lived in New Jersey, in the Morristown area.
Mhm.
They had met up with the ambitious person, Glenn Morrow, who was later to form a record label, Bar None Records, and who was also an editor or a writer first at the New York Rocker, which was one of the great music papers at that time here in this area. And again, an ambitious person who also wanted to start a band at that time. So with the other members, Rob Norris and Frank Giannini, Glenn put an ad out in the Village Voice, which was the go-to newspaper if you're looking for a band for the classified ads in the back. And it was an ad stating that they were looking for a guitar player who was into the Velvet Underground, Talking Heads, television. It's really all the bands I was listening to at the time. Uh, and I answered the ad, and they came over to the Laughing Dogs loft in Brooklyn, which happened to have a soundproof recording studio, and I could jam. They came over and they brought instruments. We started playing music, and we immediately hit it off. And we started a band called A, the letter A, lowercase. That was the first inkling of the bong. That was the first hint at the bongos. Glenn
Okay.
Morrow was then the lead singer. He was the journalist and everything. He was writing songs, and we were doing his songs. But somehow in this evolution of performing, of playing together, we did shows. In fact, we were the first to play at Maxwell's in Hoboken, which was this. I ended up moving to Hoboken when the Laughing Dog sold their loft,
Oh,
which was
okay.
only 6 months later. They got an offer. They had a fantastic place, and they sold it.
They sold it. All right.
And during that time, I was looking for a place, and Glenn Morrow lived in Hoboken. He had an apartment in Hoboken, and said, "Well, why don't you be my roommate?" So the Bongos then sort of took over Glenn's apartment. So there were three of us. Rob and Frank and I lived in Glenn's apartment. He was always next door at his girlfriend's apartment. That's how the Bongos started. Was out of the group A. Uh, the band members liked the songs I was writing. I was occasionally offering a song, saying, "I've got this tune." They really liked my songs, Rob and Frank, and the group veered in the direction of my music.
Okay. Okay.
Glenn went separately and formed a band called The Individuals, as well as
Well,
being the editor at New York Rocker and a million other things, and then eventually starting a record label.
okay.
But the Bongos went
Well,
separately as a trio, just the three of us.
okay.
And so we went on the road. We performed everywhere. So this all happened very quickly and in a continuous flow. Pretty soon we were performing in Atlanta, Georgia. That was one of our first dates out of town. That we got involved with the bands that were from there, like Pylon and later REM, etc. And when the B-52s did a big American tour, they invited us to be on tour with them.
Oh, did
By that point, we had gotten a record deal again very quickly in England on a label called Fetish Records,
fetish.
and put out a stream of singles. They were very ambitious also to promote us and to put a lot of
Exactly.
singles out. So we did one single and after another over a period of 2 years, um, and went to England to perform. We toured Europe before we toured the U.S.
Okay. How
Then
did you go? Did you go down well in the UK?
yes, we
Yeah.
did very well, and we played at some great venues, and we played at the Rainbow Theater with a bunch of New York bands, and that's recorded on an album on Stiff Records called Start Swimming.
Okay.
Um, but when we came back to the States, then we got offers to play everywhere, and we did, and that's how we got the B-52s tour, and that led to us signing with RCA Records in the U.S.
Right.
In the interim, we did put out an album here called Drums Along the Hudson
That's right. Yeah.
on Gem Records, yeah, on
Yes.
past PVC, but it's Gem. Gem was the record company, and I knew them because at the record store, all the imports, which I was obsessed with purchasing constantly,
Yeah. Yeah. Me
were
too.
were
Me too.
imported by Gem Records. So that
Yeah.
was they
Yeah.
wanted to license all our British records, which made sense, of course, because that's what they did
Right.
initially, and yeah, it was great. It became a great friendship. Now, Gem is the label that's put out the most recent Bongos record again, is The Shroud of Touring. We've done records with them throughout my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any live shows that really stood out from the early shows?
Oh, all of our shows stood out. They were great. The Bongos were a very great live band and very spontaneous.
Right.
Each show was different. Each show was in the moment, and each show happened on its own power.
Yeah.
Um, the Bongos were willing to give everything to every show, and still are.
Yeah.
And when we were starting out, we really gave it, I would say 100%, but it felt like 200 or 300% of our lives into each show.
Right.
So yeah, every show is memorable. Every show was great. I still meet
Yeah.
people that saw our early shows and
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
all the time. And
Yeah, you hear from those early fans.
yo, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And it was really great. A great time to also a great time for I think, for the music industry because we were able to do something new.
Right.
The Bongos and then later REM, certainly the B-52s before us, were starting a new wave, literally, and that's why it's called that,
Right.
where the artists were taking a bit more control and doing whatever they wanted. And as labels started signing these groups, they understood that we were coming from a different place that wasn't a corporate kind of background.
Right.
Especially most of the bands, including the Bongos, had already put out records on indie labels.
I was going to say more indie. Yes, exactly.
So it was a do-it-yourself
Yeah.
thing. So we controlled a lot of it ourselves, and in fact, until we signed with RCA, we did everything ourselves.
Right. Right. Yes, you mentioned the first album, Drums Along the Hudson.
Yeah,
Did well here and across the pond.
it did
Yeah.
very well in many places. Yeah, it's still a favorite of mine because it was magic the way it came together. We had all these diverse singles, and somehow when you put them all together, it formed an album that feels cohesive.
Right. Right.
I don't know how that really happened, but I do remember sequencing it with Rob over the telephone. I was visiting my mother in Florida, and we were trying to get everything together. And I remember just like trying to work out this order of songs,
Yeah.
within the band, and we came up with a flow that feels like that it was planned to be an album
Planned.
like that.
Right. Right. Right.
But it came out of a series of 2 years worth of singles.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's nice. It worked out like that.
It did, yeah.
And the band began to get a cult following. Yeah.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to have great fans, and we still are.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to show you. I still have my vinyl copy of
Ah,
Numbers with Wings.
oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That was our first RCA release.
Yes. I've never found this on CD. I don't know if it's available on CD.
Well, not officially, because this was that was
That's why. Yeah.
pre-CD. It's
Yeah.
never really been officially released on CD. It's only vinyl and streaming. But it
Right.
was on, oh, no, it's also, but cassettes.
on cassette as well. You can see behind me on my vinyl. I
Yeah.
keep those that I can never
Yeah.
find, have never found on CD. So
Yeah.
I hang on to those
Yeah.
copies.
Oh, I love my vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that record was designed for vinyl. You know, and all the records of that era were designed for vinyl.
yeah.
They're mixed when we're in the studio, we are making allotment to what vinyl sounds like.
Right, right.
So that record, and I'm sure most artists' records of that era are designed to be heard on vinyl.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I've never pushed for that to be a CD because I think should be remixed for CD if it's going to be a CD because that's a different format.
Right.
Vinyl, you know, you add more of this or more of that or
Yeah,
less of something or more of
right,
something
yeah,
to work well with a vinyl.
right. I know it whenever I go to a record store, I'm always looking when I get to the B's, like, is it there? Is it there?
No,
No, no, I've
I
never
don't
seen
think you're
it.
going to find it, you know,
No. Well,
but
now that I'm talking to the source, I'll stop looking
yeah, I don't think
for
you're going to
that.
find it on CD, but it
Right,
would be, I would, if it was, if Sony, it's Sony now because RCA was purchased by Sony.
right.
If they ever requested it to be on another format, I would then ask for it to be mixed properly or remastered
All
completely
right.
for that format.
Right. Maybe on a compilation or something like that as well. Here's the back of it.
Yeah.
I don't know with the glare if you can make that out, but
Yeah,
there's
we can see, people can
okay.
see that. Well, you
Okay.
know, those, that was painted on our face. We had okay. w- the Bongos always wanted to find different ways to do everything, and we asked if we could be shot in black light.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that they built this was done at the RCA studios actually,
yeah.
and they built a window frame made of black lights, and we were inside the window frame, so we have a perfect even tone of black light, and then our faces were painted with the
Oh,
fluorescent paints that
oh,
glow.
that's actually on there because I would have thought maybe it was just
No, no, it's on our
superimposed.
faces.
It's
It's on our.
actually
It
on
was
there.
painted on, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever we had on. Yeah.
All right. So you find out do interviews, things like this.
Of
Well,
course.
well, I have to say, Numbers with Wings is my all-time favorite of what I've heard from the
Yeah.
Bongos
Yeah.
because I love that track.
Well, you
And
should dive into the whole catalog because now
yeah,
Sony through our new
yeah,
signing with Sony since 2020,
yeah,
um, we've been making expanded versions of our RCA albums. So just this week was released a 31 track edition of our next album, Beat Hotel. And if
right.
you look at Numbers with Wings now on the streaming services,
Yeah, yeah,
you'll see at least 9 or 10 bonus tracks on that album
right.
because that only had 5 songs. It was a mini
Yeah,
album.
a mini album. Yeah,
Of course, it's designed that way because Numbers with Wings is mixed and recorded to be on a mini album because the grooves are quite large, so we have a lot of bass.
right,
A
right,
lot of the sound of that record, it comes out of the idea that it's for a mini album.
right.
The more song time, the more
Yeah,
songs you have on an album side, the smaller the grooves are squashed together.
that's right. Very true.
So on a mini album, you're able to put large grooves with a lot of low end. So that's what the sound of that record, that's what I'm talking about. The sound of that record is uniquely designed for that mini
For,
album
for the
format.
album. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, the song itself, I just love the driving rhythm and the guitar work on that
Thank
track.
you. Well, I
No,
loved it. I was conducted when I performed the solo on that, for instance. You know,
yes,
Richard Goddard, who's another name who
yeah,
I knew, and I really admired his work since the Strange Loves and his
yes,
early work. He conducted my solo like if it was an orchestral,
like
like
an orchestra.
yeah, I was playing the solo and he was conducting
Yeah,
me. You know,
yeah,
it was so helpful to have that direction,
right, right.
especially on our first major label record, to have a producer that was really cared about stuff like
Yeah.
that. And he also guided my vocals so
Uh-huh.
that when I sang, he would pace me and he conducted me. You know, it's very, very special. I've rarely had a producer that was so hands-on. Tony
Yeah,
Visconti later, of course, is a brilliant genius producer.
yeah.
But my first real producer was Richard Goddard.
Yes, yes. Well, I have to say again about not going overboard about the song itself, but it stood out for me over other domestic music I was hearing at the time. You know, you mentioned REM,
Yeah,
maybe, but I like this song. It sounded more.
thank you.
It sounded more British to me. It sounded more
It,
like it came from the UK. It didn't sound like an American band.
I know. I
It is,
agree with you. I'm an Anglophile for sure. I
I
love
am too.
British bands,
I am too.
and yes, it wasn't like that. I intentionally wanted to write a British sounding song, but
No.
it does come out that way because that's my background.
Yeah. Yes.
And you know, I'll tell you one more thing. about Numbers with Wings is that it came out of, it's a very heartfelt song, and it may be abstract for people,
Yeah.
but the mood and the feeling came out of the assassination of John Lennon.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I was in England, and John had passed previously, and Yoko Ono had just released Walking on Thin Ice. And I was really thinking about Lennon and thinking about John. And I was walking the street. That the record had just come out in England. I bought a British copy of it. I was listening to it on, I think, on my Walkman or whatever it was, and I kept hearing that rhythm, and it just was the chords of it were very meaningful to me. And I wrote Numbers with Wings inspired by John and Yoko.
Is
You
that
know,
right?
John's
Okay.
passing and Yoko's Walking on Thin Ice, which was the last song that Lennon worked on.
Yes. Yes.
So that was an inspiration for that song.
Yes. Well, it's nice to hear the history behind the songs and the
Mm.
origins. Yes, and the inspiration behind them. Well, my second favorite track on here is Tiger Nights.
Yeah, it's a
And
good
it's,
one.
yeah, I love the jangly guitar on that one. Yeah.
I do too. I
Yeah.
love the Django. I said of course, Rickenbackers. I only played Rickenbackers with the bongos.
All right.
And then James maybe played let's see, on that record, we might have had Rickenbacker 6 string and 12 string with that song. I'm not sure. I have to listen to it to make sure. But I'm sure I think we both had Rickenbackers on that one. It's a jangle fest. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
full of jangling.
Yeah. That's a nice,
Uh,
nice one.
I love saying that. That was a great, I think Goddard again did a great job with the production on that track.
Yes. Yes. I think on the whole mini album, he did
I
great.
think he's a brilliant producer. I re-signed. I'm actually signed currently to Richard Goddard's label Instant Records now as a solo artist.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah, I signed last fall in the September. I put out a record with Richard Goddard called All Fall Down, which is a duet with the Daryl DMC McDaniels from Run DMC. It was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
first collaboration with a rapper of any kind.
Yeah.
And to have Daryl he's an icon.
Yes.
Um, but it's on Richard Goddard's label, and
Yeah.
he's great. I love him. He's a very smart, uh, fantastic music person from a wide range of eras, from the
Yes.
early 60s, certainly through the 80s,
Yes.
90s. He, formed the Orchard, I believe, in the 90s, which was one of the biggest distributors. It is the largest distributor for independent labels.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. He has had quite a career.
Oh
Well,
yeah, one of the
well,
best, one of the best
were,
careers in the music industry.
were,
Yeah.
were you, let me ask you, were you happy with the results from the next album, Beat Hotel?
I like Beat Hotel. Um, I didn't like the experience of recording it as much as I enjoyed working with Richard Goddard. I'll tell you that. Um, there was a different approach to recording, but on the other hand, I learned a lot working in the way we did. It was very layered. With the previous album, the bongos played all together in the studio, everything is basically recorded together, like as it was a performance. With the Beat Hotel record, it's recorded in layers. It's different. I like it, but I learned a lot about individual sounds and how they can be stacked and built. Um, it was like building something. It was like building a city, an urban soundscape, if that makes sense. We're stacking sounds, as if like making skyscrapers out of sounds. It was very exciting, and I got to work in some great studios. This is just my personal view, by the way. The bongos each have different opinions on all of our records. So, but from my experience, I enjoyed the studio experiences because I got to we worked at Power Station, which at the time was an incredible large room. We worked at House of Music, which I had heard about, a legendary New Jersey studio. But most importantly, we recorded at Electric Lady, Jimi Hendrix's studio. And we also mixed the album there. And I
Yes.
was just thrilled to be in those rooms working on music.
Right. Right.
So Beat Hotel to me is it's about the experience of recording for me. It's about learning how we can do things in the studio and taking the available technology to the absolute limit. So
Right.
I loved all of that. I had a guitar synthesizer, which I borrowed from Kool and the Gang. Do you know Kool and the Gang?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And because we were in all these studios, we were meeting different musicians. When we were at Power Station, Mick Jagger sitting with us,
Uh-huh.
listening to us record drums. I mean, it was like just new collaborations were forming
Right. Right.
everywhere we went. And that was exciting. There was a lot of excitement with making Beat Hotel. Now, I really like this current reissue, this 31 track version that's come out.
Yeah.
Because why? Why does he like it? Well, because it has all of our demos as well as the original as well as the final album,
Right.
and it has live tracks. Now you
Okay.
can hear different aspects of what the Bongos music is about. One is, okay, they love to be in the studio, like I just said, and learn all this stuff. But they also love playing together. And the demos and the live shows are that side of it.
Right.
So it's a complete picture on this new streaming version of Beat Hotel, which is 31 tracks. You can hear an evolution and how the songs became refined.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I like the raw. I like the raw stuff as
Right.
much as I like
You
the
can hear
final.
the chemistry between the musicians, you guys.
Yeah, you really can. And it's a lot of fun. So that's my Beat Hotel story. I do like it though. And I think the new version is my favorite because it has all the different variations of the songs.
Right, right. I sometimes like the demos. Not
I do,
all
yeah.
demos, not all
I know.
demos, but I tend to listen to them a little bit more sometimes than the finished product.
I agree. Well,
Yeah,
that's why I'm more pleased with this new edition of the album now. But I mean I really liked it always, and it was our biggest seller was Beat Hotel.
right,
People liked it. We toured 300 shows just on Beat Hotel alone, you know.
right, right. We'll
So,
talk about the quote unquote lost album.
oh,
The
the Phantom
material
Train.
it was recorded a little bit in '85 and mostly '86.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Phantom Train.
Phantom
Yeah.
Train. How was that unearthed? How was that? How did that
Well,
happen?
it was unearthed because I brought the tapes home, as I always did. Um, but at the time we recorded it, we had just put Beat Hotel out. See, we were rolling. You have to realize the momentum that was building with the Bongos was a lot. It was a lot of emotional momentum as well as physical, musical,
Yes,
and
yeah,
career momentum. It was emotional thing. We were not working nonstop. We did Beat Hotel. We toured immediately afterwards, or at its release date, we were pretty much on the road already, just out performing. We toured first solo, then we toured, I mean, as just the Bongos, then we toured with a group called Power Station, ironically named like the album, like the studio I was describing, because I
yeah.
think they recorded there, but that was a group with members of Duran Duran.
Duran Duran, yeah. Was it John Taylor? John
It
was
was John and Andy Taylor, right?
okay,
Both
both, yeah.
two Taylors,
Two
and
Taylor.
it was great. They were great, but we toured with them. We did a double bill with them all over the place. That's when we started playing larger venues, like not theaters, but like outdoor sheds and all kinds of big places. It was fun. We toured a lot. Then and we were writing songs. I think then James and I went for a weekend somewhere like up to Woodstock and wrote more songs. We had all these songs, and in the middle of all this, we met Chris Blackwell from Island Records.
Oh,
Now, Chris
yeah.
is a genius. I mean, we talked about Richard Gottehrer, and I could name a few record industry geniuses who I've been had the pleasure to know and work with. Richard Gottehrer, Seymour Stein at Sire Records, and Chris Blackwell are three that I can think of right now. And Chris Blackwell was a hero of mine because Island was my childhood favorite label because Roxy Music and Brian and so many,
Right.
Brian Eno
Exactly.
and so many other artists that I love were on Island Records. So he was trying to bring us over from RCA over to Island. We were signed to RCA. So he said, why don't you just come to the Bahamas and we can do some recording there and we'll see how it goes. He was kind of executive producing. He assigned Eric E.T. Thorngren, who had just done the Talking Heads records, and Power Station, who I just
Yeah.
described. He was the producer for those records. So we went and just started recording. He was inviting us to record whatever we had in the studio at Compass Point in the Bahamas. And being winter in New York, we took it to be a good idea to go to a warm place and
Yeah.
record, right? So we started to do a few tracks here in my neighborhood here in Greenwich Village on 12th Street. It was a great studio called RPM. We started recording some of the ideas there and then moved the whole operation down to Compass Point. And we kind of moved in there for a few months. And it was another kind of experience for us being in the Bahamas. For one thing, the computer of the SSL console kept breaking down, which is
Well,
okay, and these things happen. And it was an
uh,
early computer for mixing, but the
yeah.
thing was, it would give us many days off.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I mentioned the word distraction earlier. It was
Right.
full
Right.
of this. There was full of distractions because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not to blame the studio. That just happens. But we were just becoming more distracted. We never really finished that album, even though we would jam and do songs, and it was cool because AC/DC were in the same studio at the same time.
Were they? Okay.
And so we could hear them during the day, and then we had the studio at night, same room. And we would kind of spend the whole day in the sun and getting actually kind of, oh, just like relaxing and then trying to sort of record at
Well,
night.
I was going to
And
say in Bahamas, it's not hard to be distracted.
it
Right.
was beautiful and it was
Yeah.
a fantastic studio.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of distractions. So that's just my way of saying we didn't finish the album. So it stayed unfinished. I had all the raw tapes forever. I had them in my house. Um, it was just years later that Marty Scott from Gem Records again, who's been like a sort of an angel, sometimes a demonic angel, but an angel in our lives, who said, "Don't you have an unfinished album?" And I said, "Yeah, yes, actually we do. So why don't we finish it?" So he's kind of pushed me to go into the studio and make final mixes,
Yeah.
put together the final mixes that we actually had, which some, and we really liked them.
Yeah.
And we made Phantom Train, which came out in 2013, I believe. And it was released on the day that was the last day of Maxwell's in Hoboken, the day that Maxwell's closed.
Is that right? The day
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was like the end of an era sort of for us that we wrapped up. That was pretty much like a end of an era in a few ways when that album came out. But I do like it. It's one of my favorite sounding records we've ever made is the Phantom Train.
Okay, so you're real pleased with that.
I was
Okay.
we were pleased with it. And we got to meet we were big fans of Kraftwerk.
Oh,
And
yes,
and
yes.
in the Bahamas, living there and always at the studio was Emil Schultz, who wrote the lyrics for Trans Europe Express and The Model and Neon Lights. And he was there as sort of a artistic, almost like a guide for us. He's also a guide of the Bahamas because he lived there and would take us on expeditions to looking for pirate treasures and things. Uh, um,
Did you ever find any treasure?
we would find pipes a lot. He would find pipes that were old pipes made of who knows what. We would find pieces of things, which I saved, yeah. But what he did was he inspired some songs, and also he did the artwork. A lot of different pieces of art that are used in the packaging of the album were designed by Emil Schultz. So I love that because it has a Trans Europe Express kind of feel. He knew
Yeah.
that we were fans of that album.
Yes, I can see that going and looking at the album cover now. I can
Yeah,
see.
it's all Emil, and he did the Polaroid on the back cover was done by Emil. He's a very special artist,
Yes.
very unique artist. As you know, Kraftwerk had great packages on their albums.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes, they
Yeah.
did. Was it still in '87 that you released Cool Blue Halo?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Quite different from the Bongos material, more chamber pop and acoustic on that one.
It is.
Yeah,
It is
and
very
then
different.
a nice
That was a deliberate
and a
choice.
nice addition of the cello. I always enjoy that instrument. Yeah,
So do I.
yeah,
It was a deliberate choice,
yeah.
not to sound like anything I'd done before, and to get to the root of the song in a different way. That it wasn't a lot of instrumentation, just a quartet. That see again, it's maybe a reaction to the Beat Hotel process of layering. I wanted to not layer. I wanted to just do a performance. So that album is live,
Right, right, exactly. Yes,
and there's no overdubs on it. It's just the four instruments. Well, the voice and four instruments,
right,
and that's it. And so that was an experiment.
right, right. How did fans react to that release?
It seems like I think it was well received, and certainly critically it was well received. I was very happy and relieved about that because I really thought it might be hated, and I went through a panic after release on the release time. I went through a serious panic that it was going to be disliked and hated, but actually it was liked and loved. So I loved it too.
Yes. Well, I think, any musician, if you produce what's inside you, what you like, naturally you're going to find an audience, I think, and
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
for the most part, I think they'll gravitate to that.
Sometimes, well, but there are exceptions. Like when Lou
Yeah,
Reed did his Metal Machine music, I happen to like it,
yeah,
but that was like widely hated, even by his
yeah,
own fans,
yeah,
but that was in his heart, he was making a real album. People say, oh, that was a album to get out of a record deal. I don't believe it was. I believe Lou had been collecting those tapes that became Metal Machine music since the 60s or early 70s.
yeah.
And he had been making guitar sounds that made to people sound like noise. But
Yes, yes,
he
yes.
was interested in these tones and these sounds and these harmonics. And so when he put that out, even though that was from his heart, it was hated, and he was
Yeah,
very critically panned, and also
yeah. Yep.
fans hated it. I
Yeah. Yeah.
disagree with that. I think it's
Right.
fine, and I stick with anything Lou Reed did.
Right, right. Well, in the 90s, you released a couple of more solo albums
Me?
as well
Yeah. Yeah.
and as well as the live, and I like this title, going back to the cello, Between Heaven and Cello. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that title.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for the title. That title came from Andy Warhol's Interview magazine. They did an article about me, and the
Mhm.
headline of the article was Between Heaven and Cello.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
thought, okay, that's a good one. So we use that. Yeah.
Yes, I like that. I like that. Well, very interesting. Your involvement with our favorite Texan, Bobby Fuller, Forever in 1999. Uh,
Yeah, that was one of the first compilation albums that I contributed to. Yeah.
okay. I just posted my chat with Ty Grimes, and I know that name probably doesn't ring any bell with you, but he was a drummer. Um, his brother Gaylord played drums with Bobby.
Oh, really?
And Ty, his younger brother, was in talks with Bobby at the time of his death. Yeah. So
Wow.
he was in talks to maybe take over the drums at that very time. They were out in, California. But at that time that, mysteriously, he passed away. So very interesting to hear that. Well, in 2004, you got to perform alongside Donovan for a series of shows. How was that experience? Yeah.
I was excited when he asked me to play a show with him at a very special venue in New Jersey called the Tabernacle, a beautiful venue kind of in the round in Mount Tabor, New Jersey, a very obscure small town. And I had never been there, but it sounded so beautiful and intriguing that I said, yes, of course, I'd love to perform with you there. And we struck up a friendship that has lasted many years. That because, as you know, that's the year 2003, and we have worked together ever since that night, really.
Yeah.
I was performing already in my show. I was doing one or two of his songs. I was doing Cosmic Wheels, um, I think a slightly obscure song by Donovan, but one of my favorites. And I was doing that, and also a song Guinevere, which was on his maybe Sunshine Superman album.
Yes.
And so he joined me on stage when I did Cosmic Wheels, and he joined. That was the first time we would perform together. It was very sudden. He just was suddenly on stage with me. It was not planned, and that was great. And then we started. Soon after that, did you say 2004? Was that when he did Beat Cafe
Yes.
album?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then he asked me to host, MC, sing backgrounds, and read poetry during his Beat Cafe shows, and we did 9 of those in New York. At,
Wow.
and it was really great. Joe's Pub at the Public Theater,
Yeah.
and I performed as Allen Ginsberg, and read Howl on stage. That was also great. And we went on from one project to another after that. Soon after that, he was playing Carnegie Hall and asked me to help him put together a show, which I did. I also put together a television special for, I think, BBC. We recorded here in New York. It was great with an all-star band. We combined I had the contacts here in New York to put together a band that had members of the David Letterman band and the, I guess, SNL band.
Yeah.
And it was a super group behind Donovan. It was just fantastic.
Now that's the guy, Donovan, I'd love to have an interview with. I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, he's great.
That would be something. Now,
Yeah.
just between you and me, I like Dylan, but
Uh-huh.
I've always been more partial to Donovan.
Oh, of course, with me too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just can't. Sometimes I just can't get around. This is not a. I'm not going to knock Dylan, but I can't get around his vocals, his voice. But Donovan has a more pleasing voice.
Donovan has a beautiful
Yes,
voice.
yes, he does.
Donovan is far more musical.
Yes, he is.
Donovan, from the very beginning, was more musical because
Right,
Dylan, that I teach a class about Greenwich Village in the 1960s, and there's
right,
a lot about Dylan. And I'm not going to criticize him
right.
because he's, obviously he's absolutely one of the most loved
Mhm. Right.
and
Well,
admired
for
songwriters of all
me,
time.
for me, I prefer his covers. Other bands or artists covering his songs. I prefer those versions to his originals.
Well, those are very successful. Were very successful for him too.
Yes, right.
But
Yeah.
personally, I mean, as a musician, I mean, Dylan's early songs were really folk songs. He took the music and then sort of rewrote the lyrics and did this many times.
Right.
Had to face many legal issues because of that.
Yeah.
But Donovan was from the very beginning writing melodies that were
Mel-
immortal, and melodies,
right.
beautiful,
Melody.
everlasting melodies that we can't forget. And he was writing them, creating them. So he was writing words and music in a very together way, where Dylan was really writing words that was attached to a folk song that already existed in many cases. Uh, and then he started, then by this time he did Tambourine Man, then there's more originality. But before
Yes.
that,
I
Donovan
think
was already writing music because he was so into jazz and learning music from the inside out in ways that maybe Dylan was, but he wasn't really writing songs that way.
right.
So I personally always prefer
Yeah.
Donovan,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's hard to badmouth Dylan because he has so many fans. They love him and they're going to always stand up for him, and I'm fine with that too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I feel the same way. Well, you were executive producer for the Nomi song in 2005, a documentary of Klaus Nomi.
Klaus
Now,
Nomi was great.
yeah,
The Bongos played a show with Klaus Nomi
yeah.
early on our when we first started out, and we loved Klaus very much, and I was happy to be involved with that project. Yeah.
Well, that's the first time his name has come up with me doing these interviews, so I had to bring that up. I thought that was
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, yes.
Thank
And
you.
and then in 2007, your memoir, Frontman, was
Yes,
published.
it
Yes.
was. It was.
How long was that in the making?
It took a year to write it, a year, pretty much solid year to write that book. It was a meditation that I would do each night and write. And it was cathartic to kind of go back and see what I had done and write about it and to try to understand it. So that book is also both of my books, that Frontman and Music and Revolution, I think are revealing because it's about figuring things out in real time. Like I'm writing about figuring it out. With Music and Revolution, which is my next second book, that was also about trying to figure out the music scene that had happened here in this neighborhood that I live in. But it was like the process of figuring out how these things fit together. With the memoir Frontman, it was the process of trying to figure out the things that all the elements we're talking about, how that made me who I
Who
am,
you are, right, right. Exactly,
So it
exactly.
was both books are a process of you can feel, and I'm sure with many authors, you write this way, but I write that way where I'm, trying to figure it out and I leave that in, like the idea of the thinking process of it.
Yes, yes. Very important, I think, very important. Well, another name that stood out to me for different reasons on the book tour, Joyce DeWitt was a guest reader, and she's the only surviving cast member from Three's Company.
She
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
She's
Wow.
great. She's
Yeah,
great. And she was so great and so funny.
yeah,
When the book came out and I was offered to do a tour, I felt awkward reading from my own book. It just seemed too much. It was just too close to home. It was actually in the home. It was the home.
yeah.
So,
Right,
I couldn't really do it. I couldn't feel comfortable reading my own book.
right.
So I had met Joyce and we had done some things together. I think she had appeared on one of my shows or something in New York. And I asked her if she would be interested in doing that with me, and she was. I was thrilled. So we did a lot of cities, and then we ended up at Carnegie Hall. We did a musical reading of Frontman with a lot of guests, and Joyce read
Yeah,
some great chapters there. Yeah,
yeah. How did you rein her in? How did you get her to do that? Joyce.
I just asked her. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
wow.
we had met through my manager at the time, Alexandra
Mhm.
Parent. She was great, and they were friends, and
Yeah.
we started talking. And I said, "Would you want to do that?" And she did.
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow.
And she was
Kudos.
fantastic, really fantastic. Yeah.
I was going to say kudos to her. Well,
Yeah.
and then we, as mentioned earlier, we talked about this. You finished production work on the album you started at 16 with Tiny Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally came out. Finally came out. Well, that was a fulfillment of a promise,
Oh, yeah,
having that record come out.
yeah,
Because I did promise him it would come out. I just didn't know where or how.
yeah.
You know, even when I signed to RCA, I kept thinking, well, maybe they would want a Tiny Tim album. But of course, I mean, it was just not appropriate, you know. But it was for Collector's Choice Records. It was appropriate in the 2010s, in 2013 or whatever year that was.
Right.
Did you say it was 2012 or 2010? What year?
What year was that? What year was that? 20.
Around
Okay. I
around
think it was.
2012.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I didn't have it specifically here, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But yeah,
Collectors Records. I've got quite a few of those
yeah,
on that label.
yeah, they were great.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. What was the reaction? Did you hear from anybody, any fans about that?
I think it was good. Yes, I did hear. I heard from many fans. I heard from one of them was Justin Martell, who happened to be 21 years old and writing. Actually, I heard from him before, as he knew that I had those tapes. Was a young writer, Justin Martell, who was working on I guess not really authorized, but the definitive biography on Tiny Tim. I believe it's called The Immortal Troubadour. The Eternal Troubadour by Justin Martell. He was working on that book and called me to interview me. He's the one who really encouraged me to put out those tapes as an album, and I said, yes, I agree, it needs to happen now. So I located Collector's Choice Records.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
but some fans knew that I had the tapes
Yeah, yeah.
because Tiny Tim mentioned them.
Mhm.
And when he passed, he left my tapes, the recording with my name on it, with his belongings. And on the top of a stack of recordings was my recordings of him in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
So people knew about them through what he left behind.
Through what he left behind. Wow,
Mm.
that's interesting. Well, in 2010, your album Glow came out, and that was produced by Tony Visconti.
It was, yeah.
Yes,
Finally, that was somebody I had wanted to work with most of my life, yeah.
right, right.
And we also wrote 9 of the songs for that album together.
What a producer, right?
One
Now,
of the best ever. He is George Martin. He's in some ways, he would never say this, and nor would he want me to say it, but in some ways he surpasses George Martin for me. For several reasons. One is the longevity and also the range of artists he's worked with.
there you go. Yeah, the range.
Because George Martin was fantastic for the Beatles and for certain artists, but really we know him for the Beatles. Where with Visconti, you can look at an amazing catalog from Badfinger to Mary Hopkin, who became his wife, and
Yeah,
McCartney's Band on the Run, which he arranged much of that, and other. It's such a range of artists that
yes.
Gentle Giant,
Oh,
Bowie,
everyone. Yes,
T-Rex.
right. Yes, yes, you're right. A wider variety. You're right. Well, 2014 tribute to Lou Reed at none other than drumroll South by Southwest in Austin.
That was a special night. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
special. Well, Lou had passed. I was always taught that when you do a tribute concert, you have to wait a full year. But the way things are now, that's not always appropriate. Lou had passed about 6 months before that show, or a little more than 6 months, and we still thought it was appropriate because that's just how that's how we view time now. Things happen quickly, and we wanted to give a tribute to Lou as soon as possible. And South by Southwest was coming up, and I called them, and I also called Alejandro Escovedo, who I knew at the time lived in Austin, and we co-hosted and co-produced that concert,
yeah.
and it was like a 5-hour tribute to Lou Reed.
Wow. Was that your only trip to South by Southwest, or had you?
No, no, I was at the first South by Southwest with the Bongos,
Okay.
and I performed in 2010 at South by Southwest. I performed many times,
Okay.
performed many times since then as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I really like it. I used to love it.
Yeah.
I still like South by Southwest. There was a time when it was a little more controllable. It's gotten very big and corporate,
Corporate.
uh,
Corporate.
but I do love it. I love going to Austin, and I used to perform there at least every year or two.
Yeah.
Every couple of years at least, I'd go to South by Southwest.
Oh yeah. Austin, what a music city.
Yeah,
Yes.
great city. So many musicians and
Oh yeah.
a lot of excitement. In 20, let's see, 20, maybe 18 or 2016. I'm sorry, I forget what year, but I had been working with Donovan's grandson, who was actually the grandson of Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, because he adopted
Oh,
Brian's son, Julian.
yeah.
So Jules Jones made his debut at South by Southwest, and I brought him there, and he was great, great. We had a great time. Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. Okay. Well, again with Tony, fast forward to 2015, you would work with Tony on the Tony Visconti TV show,
Yes.
Tony Visconti and Friends.
Yes.
How was that working on a TV program like that?
Well, it wasn't a TV program. We just called
Yeah.
it because
Oh,
initials.
you just called it that.
Yeah,
Okay.
he called it that because
Oh, okay.
the initials, the T, he's all about initials. That's why T-Rex became
TV.
T-Rex. He's always about
TV.
abbreviations.
Tony Visconti. Okay.
So it's
Okay.
the TV show. It's the Tony Visconti show. We had done it before that in the, oh, I don't know, early 2000s. We had done that at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater.
Yes.
It was very successful, really fun. What we did was Tony's famous records he had produced. The Range we talked about was done as a live concert. So we had musicians come up and do songs from Band on the Run, from the T-Rex albums, from Bowie albums, all Moody Blues, all the groups he produced, and it was great. We did it. So we did it once at the Public Theater and then once at the City Winery.
Right.
He
And you
asked he
mentioned,
asked me to co-produce both of those, and
okay.
it was a thrill and an honor,
Right.
each time.
And as mentioned earlier, and you brought up, you did play some reunion shows with the Bongos
Yes.
prior to COVID. Prior to COVID, you guys did that. And then post COVID, you were involved in a few more tribute albums: Mark Bolan, John Lennon, Pete Townsend, and Brian Wilson.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah,
a musician has to give credit where credit is due,
right.
and a musician has to, I feel, be true to their and respectful of their influences. Just like if they're, um, men, even if you don't have never met them, but in most cases here, I think I did. I had never met John Lennon.
Yeah.
I did meet Brian Wilson. Well, who else did I do? Who else did we do?
Mark Bolan and
Oh,
Pete Townsend.
I never got to really meet. I did meet Pete Townsend. He was
Yeah,
fantastic. I did not get to meet Mark Bolan, unfortunately. But it's like paying tribute to the masters, your masters. If you are a student, whatever. I was a student of all of these artists without being officially a student. I was learning from all of them. So of course, I learned from Lou Reed. I knew him, and he mentored me in many ways, the ways he doesn't even know he did. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you'll find me on many tribute albums because I have many people that I owe a lot to.
yeah. Well, it's nice you give back like that. It's nice, And,
It's really part of the experience, and it's also very satisfying to do the music that I love.
uh, your second book, Music and Revolution, Greenwich Village in the 1960s,
Hmm.
published in 2022, right?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And what kind of response have you received from that?
Well, the response has been good. I toured. We did a Music and Revolution tour again. The final event was at Carnegie Hall, like we did with Frontman. It was similar. That was similar, but the book tour this time, I was able to get a lot of the original artists who I had written about to perform at the book events. Now, the book events this time were a larger scale. We did a concert at the Museum of the City of New York, and we did a concert in Central Park at Summer Stage, which is a great institution here.
Okay.
And in that show, I was able to get together some of the greats of the 60s Greenwich Village scene, including John Sebastian of the Love and Spoonful, Jesse Colin Young of the Youngbloods, Jose Feliciano, Melanie. I don't know if you know Melanie.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah.
Melanie.
Right.
Of course, she's gone now, and so is Jesse Colin Young. But we had an incredible all-star cast in Central Park. It was hard. It was very hard to surpass that, but we did at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
In some ways, we couldn't get everyone back, so we had a different cast in Carnegie Hall, but both shows were incredible. But yeah, I mean, the book comes to life in these live events too. It's also my textbook at the New School of
Yes.
Jazz and Contemporary Music. So the book, as far as the reception, I think it's best to ask my students. It was really written for them, but it's written for everybody.
Right.
Um, and I love it. I think people seem to like it. It's a great read. You should read it.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will. I'll pick you
Yeah.
up on that.
It's
How long?
available. It's available everywhere books are sold. Yeah.
You mentioned. I mean, you're talking about Donovan. Your whole life, have you had an affinity for folk music?
Well, not always consciously, but yes, I love folk music, and sometimes I didn't even know it was folk music. Sometimes I just liked it because it was music.
Right.
But yes, Donovan's music can be considered a type of folk music. It's a modern kind of folk music. He does do traditional songs once in a while, but he's writing in a folk style. And of course, folk rock is an example of folk style that is actually with electric guitars. That's always been what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
One day it just struck me that, well, the Bongos are really folk rock
Yeah. Yeah.
in many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I wasn't always conscious of liking folk music, but yeah, I do like it, and it's in my DNA again. Um, and even Mark Bolan, I mean, T-Rex, the early Tyrannosaurus Rex was a type of British folk music.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And
Yeah.
Even Bowie came out of the British folk movement with his early albums. It's acoustic 12 string. It's acoustic, folk based.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So
A lot of them,
the answer
yeah,
is
a
yes.
lot
Not
of them
always
had a lot of them had their origins in folk music, like you said.
right. So with that said, yes, consciously or unconsciously, I like folk music.
Interesting that I see Eric Anderson as one that you profiled. I'm a big fan of Eric's music,
Yeah,
uh,
Eric's a great guy. He was in my
especially
shows. Yeah, he was in my Carnegie Hall show. Yeah, he was
okay,
great.
especially the album Blue River. You're familiar with Blue
Of
River?
course, I'm familiar with all his work. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I like Eric. He's a friend. Yeah,
That track "Wind and Sand" just gets me every time I
beautiful.
listen to it. It is
Eric is a
beautiful.
beautiful special artist, very poetic, very romantic.
Right.
One of the best of his generation.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think we've come to a good point, Richard.
Wow.
If there's anything else you'd like to, we may have omitted, or that you'd like to mention or plug, or anything
Well,
at all.
it's nice. People could visit me on social media. I'm very active with Instagram. I'm very active on Facebook. I'm very active on X and Blue Sky. And people could visit my website. It's a hub for all of these sites as well. And there's always something new that I'm working on. Currently, I'm working on a show this fall at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia. It's a tribute to Melba Moore. Another kind
Oh,
of music that you didn't ask me about, but that I love is R&B, soul music, funk, and I'm thrilled to do Melba Moore's dance music, but also she was is very familiar to people who love Broadway because she was in the original cast of Hair
air, right,
and
right.
went on from there to many Broadway shows, including Les Mis. So we're going to pay tribute to her on November 3rd at the Kimmel Center, and it benefits the Mazzoni Center, the LGBTQ plus center,
Oh, okay.
health center in Philadelphia. So I'm excited about that show. The Bongos will be performing in New York at Sony Hall with Marshall Crenshaw, a great double bill on November 10th. Those shows are coming up this fall. And I'll be doing more. I recently lost a dear friend and collaborator, Jill Sobule. Will be performing Jill's music on her birthday, January 16th, here in New York at City Winery, with a very all-star cast of musicians who admired her. So those shows come to mind as something I'd love to tell people about. But if they want to know everything, they have to come to my social media. Um, on on August 11th here in New York City, I'll be moderating a discussion about the new T-Rex Mark Bolan documentary, Angel-Headed Hipster, here at the Roxy Cinema.
Yeah.
I appear in the film. It's a great, very beautiful film about Mark Bolan's music, not about his excesses or his costumes or his love affairs or his drug use or abuse. It's about the music and his songs, and I love it. So
Will that be a wide release, or where will that be?
the theatrical release begins on August 8th. It'll be in theaters all over the country, and
Okay.
then it goes to streaming, I believe, soon after in the early fall.
Oh, okay. That would be something to look forward to, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Angel-Headed Hipster. Yeah.
Angel-Headed Hipster. I like that. I like that. All right then, Richard. It's been very enjoyable. I want to thank you for that,
My
and
pleasure.
for your time and for sharing and going your journey, as I like to put it.
My
Your musical
pleasure.
journey.
I enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much for
Okay,
having me on your show.
you're very welcome. Thank you,
Okay.
Richard.
Have a
All the
nice one.
best. All the
Thank
best.
you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.